Most of those who survived, but also those whose lives have been stolen, and the family of those whose lives have been stolen by police violence, didn't sign up to be activists, right? Didn't sign up to be organizers. But I think it's imperative that we don't just take the violence quietly. Being quiet about it, and even though police want us to be quiet now, politicians want us to be quiet, it can feel like the world wants us to be quiet, but we can't be quiet. We can't be quiet. The only answer to this kind of violence and, brutality and injustice, the only answer is us banding together and organizing ourselves and demanding the things that we all want, need, and deserve, beginning with a safe community that is free from police. Police don't bring us safety, right? Community does, resources do.
On the front lines, the most difficult part was navigating past relationships with people I grew up in my hometown, and realizing that these people don't care about liberation or care about people or struggles that don't affect them. And so I think coming to terms with letting these relationships fall apart was sort of difficult for me. Also been forms of trauma from obviously police violence, being arrested. But honestly, those things have affected me less than I think they should have. Also, the most difficult part was balancing school and trying to pretend things were normal and do classes as if what was happening was normal around us, but then we were seeing a full-blown rebellion. We're still seeing to this day Black people being killed by the police and by the state. The most surprising thing was how much community there is, that it just takes a little bit of initiative on our own to find. Because I think I grew up being around people who cared but never really organized. And I grew up in a suburb next to Seattle, but I think I'd never really realized how welcoming and how just intentional the communities that are built around shared struggles are, and how that really changed my life. It's difficult to measure actual successes in these movements when our city councils and local governments are also not the best about doing what the people actually ask them to do. For a period of time, I was sort of just showing up to things on my own because I didn't really know anyone from my hometown who'd be willing to go to protest with me. The fact that I was building these relationships with people I would have probably never met otherwise, and that we were collectively making an impact in our city because we were building networks of mutual aid and care and support, and to see that flourish still is very rewarding.
So Black Lives Matter, folks were being mobilized, to the hundreds of thousands across the country. Abolition, defund the police was at the center of the conversation. And our young folks within our coalition, we asked them hey, is this something that, you want to be a part of? And they were this is something that we want to be a part of. And so within our sphere of organizing, it was we were youth organizers, and we were focused at the school level and the county and the city. And so we're okay, we're gonna continue this work in our own sphere, because in LA, within LAUSD, they have their own school police force. And so, there have been a lot of organizing around the abuses of the LA school police, and folks who have been, targeted by them, and all the funding that was going towards criminalizing our young folks. How there was one report where it was around 9% of the students within LAUSD were Black, but over a quarter of them were, being targeted by the LA school police. And so they were tired of it, and we're okay, so we're gonna do this campaign where it's defund school police. And so it was us. A lot of work was being put in and led by LA Students Deserve. And they're still doing the work when it comes to, around that issue. But yeah, basically, and they're leading that work when it comes to that issue. But yeah, we had this campaign, and we ended up defunding the school police. And that money was then brought to create a fund called the Black Student Achievement Plan, which was this equity fund that was meant to support Black students at schools across LUSD. And I think that was a moment for me that solidified for me like the power of organizing. And it was like, we had hundreds of people in front of like, the school board offices and giving testimony and protesting and folks were mobilized on the streets. In that moment, within those summer uprisings, it was just like we had a tangible win, right? Um, and it was just like that was like what solidified for me. Like there's different ways to move people that's just outside of casting a vote. And then as I, was in, have been introduced to different spaces as we've and observed things over the past years and been in conversation with folks, learning from folks, it's like, okay, there's even further steps that we need to go to make sure that we can bring in a world in which we have our needs met, in which we are safe, in which we are liberated. And so there's just multiple fronts, but it's like, yeah, it's like through the people that that world becomes manifest.
I think I was devastated. Another Black man murdered in the street on television, and it's really helped inform me in my work with my clients and helping them navigate how they're seen in the world, especially Black women, how we're kind of at the bottom of the totem pole and we're invisible sometimes. And it's really helped me to work with my clients on seeing themselves and surrounding themselves with people that see them and finding safe spaces for themselves. And for those who want to advocate, who want to protest, to make sure that they do so in safe ways and they navigate that with as little further trauma as possible. As far as my clientele, like I said, I try to help them see themselves and recognize their humanity, even when the world doesn't want to recognize it. And then as far as the collective trauma of 2020 and the pandemic, like I said, still trying to find those safe spaces, even when it's online. I think coming together as a community is going to be the biggest thing that will help us fight against white supremacy and trauma and all of those things. And being by yourself in it can be scary, feeling alone, feeling isolated, and you start to believe the rhetoric that you're hearing all the time. So yeah, just making sure that they felt safe and that they had community. That was my biggest goal during that time. For me, it's like peeling paint. Those people that like to peel paint, or they like ASMR or something like that. For me, watching the transition from a client being completely emotionally broken from the things that they've experienced in life or mental health trials and tribulations, and watching them progress into this healthy person that can do things on their own, and they've surrounded themselves by positive people where before they barely would even talk to people or they would isolate themselves. I think that's magical to watch a person be able to transform themselves. It's like watching a caterpillar in a cocoon turn into a butterfly, but it's a human being. And for me, I get the same like fascination that people get with ASMR or something, just watching that progress. So I guess just the whole healing process and the fact that human beings can heal themselves and evolve and change and grow, and that we're not stuck. No matter how much you feel like you may be stuck, you are not stuck. It's just a really difficult journey for a lot of us to become unstuck. And some of us may not be capable of doing that, but my goal is to help as many people as possible become unstuck.
George Floyd protests and kind of social justice kind of consciousness and uprisings happening, I think people had more time to pay attention to that, which I think was good. It led to some activism, but also kind of led to some, I think, vicarious trauma. I know definitely for a lot of clients that I saw, but myself included, just kind of paying attention to those news stories and having less distractions where you're kind of more inundated with some of those things kind of was a stressor. And I think, it was good that we were paying attention to it, but it kind of, I think led to internalized stress that coming out of the pandemic, I think I saw a lot more clients first time in therapy, a lot more kind of issues around mental health because of kind of those two things. Something called like vicarious trauma, and so or just trauma is this a type of trauma? So a lot of times we think of trauma like something happening to us, where we get into a car crash or a dog attack happens to us, but we could also experience trauma and some of those same effects by witnessing something happen to a loved one or somebody we care about, somebody we identify with. And I think for a lot of people, particularly in the Black community, that happened in George Floyd, where we saw all these things. It was another reminder of kind of the sometimes powerlessness people sometimes feel, and the institutional violence people experience being in America. And then maybe even if you weren't in the Black community, you might still have seen folks that you do identify with in some ways, either at those protests and some of the violent crackdowns at protests happening. I think that leads to, again, the experience of vicarious trauma, where you're not directly impacted, but indirectly kind of witnessing it, hearing about it, gets you some of those trauma effects where you might be more anxious, might be more hypervigilant. You might have more changes in a worldview from like being like, oh, like this is a safe place, and feeling kind of confident going out, to being like, oh, like the world isn't so safe, and it could maybe affect your movements, affect how you see others, make you just more hypervigilant to kind of danger cues in the environment. Could impact things like sleep or eating. Like those are all kind of reverberations of when traumas happen, and I think definitely have affected a lot of people, particularly like with election season coming up. It's hard not to kind of tune in to a lot of those things, because they could affect us directly, affect people we care about. So I think it's easier said than done, but it's really kind of unplugging. I think kind of trying to put the phone down and then be in the moment, focus on other things that either give us joy or give us a chance to kind of just like take a step back. And then like when you do kind of engage with those things, like I think it's important to tie it to some more active coping. So instead of just maybe looking at it and feeling angry or upset or sad, which is normal and natural, also trying to tie it to something active. And so that could be, definitely voting, or it could be like writing towards your elected officials, both like kind of locally, state, nationally, volunteering, like some things that you could feel like you could have a little more control of the situation than just kind of sitting back, reading, and then feeling powerless to it.
It's really hard to grow a community organization without actually understanding what the community wants or needs. For me, when I was first starting, I didn't have an intention behind it. So when people started to have so many demands, I was like, what is going on? But I understood that like people were searching for something, right? And for me, I was like, I can really make this an experience for people. So now we're very much so like creating an experience when you come to our hikes. So we have like icebreakers where you're talking to people, introductions, little games, so we can just make sure that we're keeping a community aspect while still getting you into nature. So for me, I think what I learned most was just that people will tell you what they kind of need. And as a community organizer, you kind of have to listen to it if you want that organization to grow and actually be something that's positive for people. That's my biggest sacrifice is I don't have Saturdays anymore, really. I don't sleep in on Saturdays. Most people look forward to Saturday to sleeping in, but my Saturdays are like, I'm getting up super early. So it's definitely that. I mean, I don't do it for profit. So I am kind of just giving my time to the organization because I really see what it's done for people. I see the relationships that it's made. We're donation based. So, that helps in a way, but I'm not, charging people to run hikes. So I'll have hundreds of people on my hikes and it's just little old me trying to lead it. So it's definitely a lot just on yourself individually. I've been growing a team and they've really been helping me just be organized and not have to have so much responsibility. So I really am so thankful for them. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of sacrifices just on like the planning. I mean, I run our Instagram. It takes a lot of time. We've almost got like 8,000, 9,000 followers. So that's like an entire audience who's looking for something. So it's just knowing how to split the time and actually having the time to split it outside of my full-time career. It's a lot sometimes.
That people always stop you guys and ask, what are we protesting?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
does that make you feel?
It's sad. It's sad, but it's a reality that we're in because, I mean, I think you see a group of Black people outside walking, and naturally, like people obviously think there's a cause associated because of the plight that we go through in America. People are like, what happened in the media that we need to be outside in this way? But that's exactly why we do the walks, because it's kind of a reclamation of us just being outside and just being people. And like, there doesn't need to be a social issue or a cause or a reason that we're just enjoying nature and congregating and being together as community. There's something really beautiful in us just coming together simply in that, and like appreciating the Black neighborhoods that we're in. So for us, it's like it's laughable because it's kind of what people expect, but also it's kind of like, it's like, yeah, we're kind of like trying to change the narrative there. That when we tell people, hey, we're just walking, you see like a switch in their mind, like, oh, that is okay, I guess. It's like, yeah, wow, we can just be outside. So yeah, it's crazy, but it's real that people have that switch in their mind. I know people who ended up meeting on our hikes and now they're in like full blown relationships. Like, that's one thing that's interesting. It's like people have met from out of nowhere and they've just now grown into not even just relationships but friendships. Like, I know people who I've met on our hikes and they're like best friends now. So it's really just been seeing like the actual relationships and things that have been born out of just people hiking together. Outside of that, things that are really fulfilling are people telling me that they drove from like San Diego to come, and it's like we hike at like 8 in the morning, so it's like people driving from San Diego. It's like they really, really woke up super early to make sure that they were there to be with us. So those are things that I really think of when I'm planning it, because I understand that like people are putting so much into attending that I want to like make sure it's an equal experience for them.
If there's one thing I wish we could go back to from 2020, it was just the number of volunteers and the people willing to help and do the work, and let's go here and let's do this and let's pick this up and let's go to this protest and make sure they have food and water. And it was just, I mean, an overabundance of people willing to join in and really build community at that time. COVID had a lot to do with it, and all of us being at home, a lot of us not having to work, not having other obligations, rent kind of being stalled for a lot of people. And that's one thing that I do get into with our organizing, with self-actualization being the key to people becoming the best versions of themselves when they don't have to stress about things like bills and rent and food and all that type of stuff. They have the opportunity to do the things that they truly want to do with their lives. And I think 2020 was an opportunity for us to see what people truly want to do with their lives when they have the opportunity to do so. And because a lot of people just had the freedom to, what do you want to do today? There was no, everything was on lockdown, but we still had options, and we got to see what people truly want to do when they have the opportunity and the power to do so. Get back to remembering what's important about life, the things that truly do matter, the everyday, family, health, wealth, just the things that, some things that money can't even buy, because that's truly what's most important in life. And then once you feel like you are ready to get back into this, let's get back into it, because again, this is a generational fight. It doesn't stop at one election. And, again, we're here every day. Donald Trump apparently got elected, whenever that happened, and we're still out here working. If he makes it, in January, we're still going to be out here working, and that's not going to change. So, take your time to make sure you're in the right place, and then when you're ready to come back, let's go.